Hey everybody, in today's video we're gonna try and explain a bit about one of the most tedious things that you're gonna have to end up doing it sooner or later, and that is UV unwrapping. Now, UV unwrapping can be quite a complex theme to explain, especially if you're just starting out and you do not know how this thing works. So I'm gonna try and just give you a simple idea of what actually UV unwrapping is. The easiest way to explain this would be that UVing or UV unwrapping is basically the process in which you are telling Max or whatever software you're working with how to apply a two-dimensional image or a 2D image that you can work in either Photoshop or some other photo manipulation software. How would you apply that image to a three-dimensional model? So to make this even more comprehensible, let's say you have a model of a box. Like if you want to add any material to it, like let's go ahead and open our material editor, and over here I have two material. I have the neutral gray and I have one more material, which if I add it, you're gonna see it's a checkerboard material. And if I zoom around, you're gonna see that right away Max knows exactly how to position this texture on the actual model. Now, the reason that Max knows how to do this is that by default, all the primitives or the standard primitives here have some kind of a UV map applied to them. So this is how basically Max works. If you have a box like this, by default, it comes with a UVW map on top of it. And once you click on the UVW map, you're gonna be presented with something like this. For example, here I can see that the texture is being presented quite nicely on the top, but on the sides we have an issue, and on the bottom it's great again. The reason for this is that by the default UVW maps, you have mapping types. You have the planar, you have spherical, which kind of depends, oh actually this is cylindrical, which kind of depends on what kind of model you have. You can choose the spherical one, you can choose the box or the face. In this case, since we have an actual box, if we just drop in a box UVW map, then everything is fine. So this would be great if we had one map that we simply want to apply to our model without having to work on it in Photoshop. For example, if we just have a seamless texture that we want to span across the entire box, this would be great. But now, what happens if we want to, well, let's just call it peeling. What happens if we want to open up this box and be able to give each of these faces a different surface? Well, this is where the UV unwrapping comes into play. So I'm just going to delete the UVW map. As you can see, nothing has changed. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to apply a UVW mapping clear. So this is going to delete all of the information that are up for this box. I'm going to right click, convert to enable poly. So now we have no UVW mapping. So since Max doesn't know how to deal with the 2D image that we have here, like with this one, it is showing me the base color. As you can see here, I have black. So this is why the box is black. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and click on the unwrap UVW map. In case you don't have it here, just go from the modifier list and just choose unwrap UVW. All right, here we go. As soon as we did this, this is what we are seeing. So again, we have something like we had previously. In this case though, it is we cannot choose the options that we previously had, but now we are presented with a different set of options on on the Unwrap UVW. So before we dive in deeper into the options of our Unwrap UVW, I just want to give you one last clarification on what actually is supposed to happen with the Unwrap UVW. For example, if we have something as simple as this, it would require us to flatten it so we can actually draw on it. Imagine this is a box and you're working in a warehouse. Once you're done with the box, in order to preserve space, you're gonna have to find some way to get this to be flat and stack all of those boxes on top of each other so they're not taking so much space. For example, here's an image that is supposed to showcase this. As you can see, right here, we have our box. And in this case, as you can see, we have these two parts folding out on the sides, which can be seen here once the box is totally flattened out. And now it's taking away a lot less space, and at the same time, instead of having it height, it's just one strip of polygons. Now this is the base and the basics of UV unwrapping. So if you can look at this image over here, you're going to see that this box is basically cut up. So you can see that this edge here, the one across and the one to the bottom, has been detached from this side and this side. So let's see how we can do this inside 3ds Max. So the first thing you need to know about unwrapping with the Unwrap UVW is that you can choose the vertices or the vertices. You can choose to select the edges and the polygons. In this case, what I want to do is I'm going to select the edge. And once you select the edge, you're going to be able to click on the different edges. So as we saw previously, these three lines should be cut in order for this side over here to fold down. We're going to scroll around, or actually rotate around to the other side. And we're going to do the same thing over here. So I'm going to hold down Control and select these three edges over here. So I have all of those selected. So how do we cut them? The way to do it is, if you scroll down over here where it says Peel, underneath you're going to see Seams. This is the button you're looking for, Convert Edge Selection to Seams. As soon as you click it, you're going to notice that these red lines are going to convert to blue lines. So this is basically, it means that at these lines, Max is going to think about this box as if it were cut out. So the only thing that I need to do here is make one more cut for all of these faces going across. So again, I'm going to click on this side over here and click on Convert to Selection to Seams. Alright, so this is what I have so far. Now let's see what happens. I'm going to go ahead and click on Open UV Editor. As soon as you open up this, you're going to notice something. You have this checker box in here, and which is called the 0 to 1 texture space. That means that everything that's inside this checker box is the texture that we're going to be using. So we don't want to have anything protruding outside of this edge here, because if it goes outside, it's basically going to tile on itself. All right, so this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to select my polygon here, and in here I'm going to select all of the polygons. There we go. And now I need to find a way to make this flat or flatten it, so we have something like we had on this image. So we want to flatten it like this. The way to do it is, once you have the UV editor open, you want to go ahead and switch over to Mapping, and now from here you want to choose Unfold mapping. It's going to ask you walk to closest face, go OK. As soon as this is done, you're going to notice something. We have exactly the same look like we had on our image. Like here it is. Since we cut those 3 lines over here and those 3 over here and the one going across, we ended up with the same exact look over here, as you can see it. Now, if you take a look at our box, we're going to notice that we have the same distribution of the polygons. Now, just to make it more obvious, I'm going to increase the tiling to something like 5x5 so we can see it better, maybe even more. Yeah, this should work. So basically what we did here is we made it possible that we can now export this image and we can work straight on this texture, let's say in Photoshop, and then once we re-import it back into Max, we can simply apply it to our model. So this is the very first and most basic unwrapping, and that is the unfold mapping, where you just cut out a few edges and you can unfold the entire box. But let's see what else we can do. As you can see, we have quite a bit of options over here. So let's go ahead and try to explain a few more of these options. So again, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to delete this unwrap UVW. Again, as you can see, we have nothing here, and I'm going to go and apply a new unwrap UVW mapping. For the second type of unwrapping, I'm going to go ahead and add a new unwrap UVW. As you can see, I've deleted the previous one. So unwrap UVW, we have a new one. So in order to get this box unwrapped, I don't have to go ahead and manually cut out these sides, because this is a very easy to UV unwrap model, because it's a very primitive box. So what I can do here is I'm going to go ahead, open the UV editor, select all of the faces, and now in the mapping, instead of using the unfold mapping, I'm going to go ahead and choose flatten mapping. It is going to ask me to specify the polygon angle and the spacing. This is basically the padding or the space that's going to be left between the UV aisles. So in this case, I'm just going to leave it at 45 and click OK. As soon as this is done, you're going to notice that all of these sides now have the actual texture applied to them. But unlike the previous example, you can see that now all of these sides can be moved individually without affecting the other ones. So how can we make this to look like it was previously, like one continuous piece? Well, that's actually quite easy, because all you're gonna have to do is select just one of these sides or one of these edges, and as soon as you select one of these edges, it's going to turn red. But what else you're going to notice is that one of the other sides that is basically going to be close to it is going to turn blue. So how do we get these two to merge together? All you have to do for this operation is right click and choose Stitch Selected. Once you click it, you're going to now notice that here we have this white line, and if we click here, both of these can now be moved together. Or if we choose this option over here, it says select by element UV toggle. This means once I click here, now both of them, since they are they're not separate anymore, but they're one continuous piece, by selecting one, both of them are going to be selected. So I'm just going to go ahead and unselect this. So again, let's try and stitch this portion over here. So the bottom part over here with this. So again, I can either go right click and stitch selected, or I can go ahead, click on it over here, like for this one, and I can click stitch custom. So it's going to custom stitch it to the one that's to it next to it, and again, stitch custom, and one more time, stitch custom. So here we go. We didn't have to cut out any of the edges over here, but now if we take a look, you're gonna see that by simply stitching them together, we already have the seams reapplied to our box. Now the only thing that you need to be careful here is, let me just make this bigger so you guys can see it better. Like I previously said, you want to make sure that your entire box is within the 0 to 1 space. So I'm going to go ahead, select all of these faces, and here you have the move, rotate, and scale buttons. They correspond to the original. You have buttons you have like the Q, W, E, and R. The ones you have in Max, they work here as well. So let's just scale them down just a tiny bit until they get to a size more manageable and to a size where we can use most of the texture space. Something like this. There we go. Now, in case these buttons don't work for you, for example, for the Q, W, E, and R, you probably just need to press this keyboard shortcut override toggle. Once you have this pressed, everything should work out perfectly. And if we take a look at our image, now we're going to notice that the entire box has the textures applied to it. So let's go ahead and try and see a few more other examples. For me, this was the first one, and this is the actual box. I'm going to hide it, and I have another one, which is a rectangle. Rectangles are pretty much an elongated box, so it should be similar. But it's going to give us a great opportunity to explain a few more of the options that we previously saw with the box. So again, I'm going to go hit unwrap UVWs, and now I'm going to try and do this thing the same way we did it previously in the first example. So I'm going to go ahead and select these 3 edges over here and one across. Again, rotate, select those 3, and now hit the UV editor. Now, just like with the previous type we saw, the first example at the box, I'm going to go over mapping. Oops, need to. All right, here's the problem. Like I just explained like 5 minutes ago, and I messed it up. Again, select all of these edges. Don't forget, convert edge selection to seams. As soon as those lines are blue, that means they are seams. So there you go. I didn't want to edit this because, well, stuff happens. All right. Again, I'm going to select all of the polygons, mapping, and unfold mapping. Click to closest face. Okay. All right. So this is what we have here. Now, this actually would work. Let's go ahead and just apply one texture to it. This thing would work. I'm not saying this is wrong, but the thing is, when you're working with models, you want to use up as much as texture space as you can from the 1 to 0 texture space. So if we take a look at it here, this side is way too long and it's taking way too much space. So what we can do here is I can select this piece over here, and now instead of having it come across on this side, I can go ahead either try and break it off by clicking the button here which says under explode. The first one says break, or I can right click and break. So once I have this broken off, I can move it across to anywhere I want. And similar like we did it with the box, I can select the edge, select this one, and hit on stitch. And now, as we can see, we have a lot more that we can work with. I can just scale it up, put it in position, and this way, now our rectangle is taking a lot more of the original texture space, which is something that we should be always trying to achieve. So as you can see, again, the texture is great, and we managed to explain how the break option works. All right, again, I'm gonna open up my layers, close the rectangle, and open up a cylinder. All right. The cylinder is another primitive that comes packed with max, and unlike the boxes, it can have, it actually not can, but it does have a different geometry to it. For example, not all of its sides are flat, and that is going to help us explain a few more of the other options that we can choose when we are unwrapping something like this. All right, so again, I'm gonna hit the unwrap UVW. And by default, you're gonna see some green lines over here. Now, these come pre-packed with the cylinder, and since I don't wanna have those, and I wanna have a clean geometry or UV space, I'm going to click a UVW mapping clear, right click, convert to editable poly. And now I'm going to put an unwrap UVW. So in this case, we no longer have those lines. So let's see, how can we make this 3D example into 2D space? Well, the first thing that we can do here is I can select the top polygon over here. And if we take a look at it from the top over here, you're going to see this is actually a circle. So I can use one of the projection options that the unwrap UVW has. And those projection options are over here. For example, you have planar map, you have cylindrical map, you have spherical map, and box map. Or I can simply choose to click on the quick planar map. This quick planar map is simply going to add a planar projection to whatever I have selected. So you're going to click on quick planar map, and you're going to see that on the edges now I have this green line. I'm going to go over, do the same thing on the bottom, quick planar map. Again, I have one here. So what I want to do here is take one of these edges, click here, and click on this button loop. So this is basically like when you are modeling and you want to loop one of the edges. It's doing the same exact thing. It's just selecting all of the edges that are going or spanning on that loop. So now, again, I'm going to convert the edge to seams. So now I have this top portion and the bottom portion. There you go, selected. And both of them, if we open the UV editor, you're going to notice one thing. This portion over here is on its own. This one is on its own. And if we click on this or any of these polygons, I can go ahead and click this button over here that says expand polygon selection to seams. So it's going to select all of those polygons. Now, since I can see that these edges did not get turned into a seam, I'm probably gonna have to go ahead and, well, let's just see if we can turn those into seams. So again, deselect. There we go. Now they should be. If they're not, well, it's gonna be a problem, but it shouldn't be. All right, so again, I'm gonna select all of these Ah, so that's why. One of the things that you need to be careful is once you click this ignore back facing. So this means that whatever I'm seeing here, when I make a selection like this, if the ignore back facing is selected, nothing on the other side has been selected. So make sure you tick that one off. And now I'll just select it like this. There we go. We have all of these selected. All right, so how do we make this flat? Well, like I told you previously, we have this projection option over here. You can click on the cylindrical map, and right away, it's going to add this yellow cage over here. And you can see that this cage is, we can just click on fit. It's gonna go downwards, and it's going to make our selection flat, which is exactly what we want here. So again, deselect, and now we're going to notice that we have this here flat surface that we can work on. Now, the only thing that I can notice here is if we zoom in a bit, on all of the sides you have green lines. The problem is that once you get here, you're going to notice that these lines that are coming inwards are green as well. This means that we have a problem. That problem is that these vertices that are on that line, if we move them around, you're going to see that those are not welded. So I can select those, Control W to weld them, and as soon as that green line is removed from the inner part, that means we no longer have that problem, and we can just move this, and it's going to be the same exact. So Control W is your shortcut for the weld. All right, so let's see what is happening now with our model. All right, we're gonna go ahead and apply this. All right, so as we can see, our model has some texture, but if we take a look at the top and the sides, it really doesn't look like it's doing its job properly, because not all of these cubes or sides are the same. So that means the first thing that's wrong is that the size of all of these is not the same. Now, in order to get this to be the same, we're gonna have to make a selection over here, and I'm gonna go select this entire thing. Gonna have to make it smaller. Usually, if I were to do this, I would put it on my other screen so I can watch it, but since the program wouldn't, or the recording program wouldn't see anything what I'm doing, I'm gonna have to deal with this way. So what I'm gonna do is click here and scale it in one of, let's go ahead, scale it in one side, and you're gonna notice this, as soon as I'm scaling it in one direction, those cubes are either getting squashed or stretched, and they are getting to be a similar size as the ones on the top. Now, this used to be the old way of doing it. Anything that's anyone that's working on a version, I think if you have a newer version than 2011, you should have this new layout, which is going to allow you or give you access to one of the most amazing buttons, and this is this rescale element. Once you click it, both of your, or actually not both, but all of your UV islands are going to get the same exact UV space size. So all you're going to have to do here is just select, there you go, oops, move this across, and now if I want to take this, you can go and simply just select this one, right click and go stitch, go on the bottom, right click, stitch. So now the next thing that I want to do is get all of this into my 0 to 1 space, and this would be easiest to achieve it with the pack custom. So you just click this and Max will put it inside the texture. Just move it up here, and now you're gonna notice this, our cylinder is basically UV unwrapped. So with this, I would like to put end on the first example because this video has been spanning a bit too long for me. So in the second part, we're gonna try and deal with some of the more complex shapes, and we'll see where it goes from there. So see you in the next video.